And welcome everyone to the top of Partington Hall here on the Beaver Hillside campus of Nye College. My name is Brad. I'm the station manager here at WMYK 88.7 FM, the home of Warrior Radio. And one of our favorite features that we do here is Ministry of the Month. We really like that. We like highlighting local churches around the area. And with our move to New York City, we're trying to get more churches involved in that area so our students can visit them. And we're going to talk to Sarah Bournes, pastor of mission and formation over at Hope Church Midtown. Sarah, first of all, thanks for doing this. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, I'm so glad to be here. Thanks for asking.
Yeah, originally from Southern California. Sarah has lived in West Philadelphia. Whenever I say that, I want to break into the Fresh Prince song, by the way.
Oh, me too.
Yeah.
Yep.
And she also lived in Redding, California, Colorado Springs, and now New York City. Before joining the pastoral staff at Hope Midtown, Sarah's previous 15 years of full-time ministry included urban youth work, poverty and justice services, university discipleship, nonprofit leadership, and missionary care. She is completing her Master's of Divinity in Intercultural Studies at ATS in Manhattan, which we're going to talk about.
Completed.
Yeah, now are you class of 20 with that?
Yes, I would be one of those lucky ones.
Yeah, that's cool.
Graduating in,
She loves Broadway, the Brooklyn Bridge, the Roosevelt Island Tram, teaching, writing, neighboring, mentoring, drinking Turkish coffee, which is great. Even the aroma of that, I love. Cooking for her friends and being on mission with Jesus in New York City. So, Sarah, again, thanks for doing this. I want to talk about, we mentioned your title, but what's your official role with Hope Church? What do you oversee doing?
Yeah. So it's kind of a dual role of discipleship, spiritual formation, which includes our home groups or virtual groups now, and all things just kind of content and really, ministering to our people in a spiritual formation kind of way. So
yeah, of course.
I preach about once a month and lead workshops and just various things, especially now in online world where it's kind of caring for our people in those ways.
Absolutely.
And then also outreach and mission. So how are we connecting in our city, and what are we doing, partnering?
Yeah.
Who are we partnering with over the world, around the world? And so, get to do both of those things. So I see it as a cool dual, inward and outward focus, our inward personal journeys with Christ, and then also how that turns us outward and lets us focus on what's going on in the world and our mission with Jesus.
Yeah. Now, I wanted to ask you about your connection to ATS. How did you first hear of it? Because that's kind of cool, the connection here with Alliance Theological Seminary.
I know. Yeah, I worked at the Alliance headquarters in Colorado Springs for a number of years, and so everyone that I knew that had gone to ATS was just a phenomenal person, and I realized that the common denominator among all of them was that they'd been to ATS and just had their worlds rocked, and
very cool.
That it was just a really neat place for transformation to happen, and so I just wanted what they had, and so that's how I moved from Colorado out here 3 years ago.
Yeah, and I want us to talk about your role as an adjunct professor at Nye College. You told me about that. If you can expand on that.
Yeah, it kind of just happened slowly where I was a student at ATS, but on the older side. So I just had done a lot of this kind of work before, and so I've gotten to teach a few classes alongside some of my own professors. Just did some co-teaching, and then that turned into an adjunct role at NIAC, where this last semester in the fall I taught a spiritual formation class for new freshmen, most of whom were virtual. So, starting my professor role over Zoom was very interesting, but it was so worthwhile. Really incredible students that showed up in the midst of everything. So,
very cool.
Love teaching spiritual formation, and
if you're just joining us, guys, we're talking to Sarah Bournes, pastor of mission and formation over at Hope Midtown. Now, your bio mentions you're originally from the West Coast. What's the transition been like now that you're planting roots now way out here in the East?
Yeah, I really am planting roots for the first time. I've kind of been a little more nomadic the last 10 years or so of ministry, just taken me a number of different places and been around the world, but all short-term kind of stints. And I just felt like God was really leading me to New York City, that sort of all things about my life and passions and dreams kind of converged here. New York City is, one of the most international places to be in the world. And and just a lot of my loves for discipleship and ministry, but also for mission and outreach and caring for the least and the lost. It just was like everything was right here. So I do, for the first time, feel like, man, I am really wanting to be rooted here for a good while. And yeah, and the East-West Coast kind of connection, there's some pretty strong similarities that, LA to New York is not as big of a jump maybe as other places, but I do miss palm trees and the beach and all that good stuff.
Yeah, how often are you able to get back?
With COVID, I actually spent a significant amount of my summer there, just being able to do things virtually and needing to be with family. So it was great. Yeah, that was one of those sneaky blessings in disguise.
Yeah. Okay, one thing I wanted to ask, you almost sort of answered it too, but speaking of the East Coast, one thing I feel like being in such a metropolitan city as New York City, there must be ample outreach opportunities, right? When you look out and you see all this population here, melting pot, so much diversity.
Yeah. I mean, it's a place where I think that you could not have any lack of opportunities to just ask Jesus, like, where are you working and what can I do to join you? And so that's kind of my posture is, where is the Lord working today? And both for me personally, but also as I help guide our church towards that, where are you on the move in this city? And how can we just notice that and then join you there? But it's, you're kind of just any population, any interest that you have, I think you can find it here. And so it's just a matter of asking God to reveal that and joining him.
Now, you talked about this with as a adjunct professor, but the challenge is, I mean, let's not kid ourselves. This has been a tough year for churches, everybody, like businesses. If you could talk about the challenges that you guys have faced and on the other side, potential opportunities that this pandemic has caused for Hope Midtown Church.
Yeah, definitely two sides of the same coin right there.
Yeah.
Like the challenges are the opportunities and vice versa. So, I think, a huge challenge. Well, I actually started my role just 6 weeks before the shutdown. So I had literally only been to my church 6 times in person.
Wow.
Before I was only online with people.
Yeah.
So there are still some people after almost a year of being on staff and pastoring and everything, still people that I've never actually met face to face, but know fairly well.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
So it's an interesting, like in some ways you kind of can go a little deeper, faster, because you're just like really getting in there in the weeds with people when you're leading groups online and things like that. Then it's also like, it happened so much slower that I feel connected and like this sense of really shepherding our people. And so that's been a personal challenge, but also an opportunity to just really, dive in with people in a deeper way over the phone or, be more intentional. So, and then as a church, I would say for the first, maybe 6 months, maybe even longer, I think we really struggled with, we wanted to just really take pressure off of our people for any kind of service or outreach or mission, just because it was like we were all doing the best we could to just barely hang on. And, the height of everything.
Absolutely, yeah.
New York City was just so crazy and scary. And so not really requiring anything more of them. I think, was necessary, but it also meant we really turned inward and we were kind of isolated, and there weren't a lot of, for us, opportunities that we took to truly engage with our neighborhoods and our communities and the poor. And just, there's no lack of need, but I think that we really struggled with balancing, how do we care for our own people well while, facing outward and maybe figuring out that balance, I guess, or just, I think there were some things that we could have done better in terms of just how to care for our city. And so hopefully that will continue to be in front of us and we'll take advantage. But it's a tricky thing in leadership.
No, it is, because there's no real precedent for this, right? Like a year-long pandemic. You can't, it feels like it's a movie kind of thing. So you kind of have to.
We just kept thinking it would be over and we would just hold on long enough.
Oh, absolutely.
Enough. But now it's like, this isn't over yet.
Nope.
So now we just need to figure out how to live with all of those tensions and still be people who are on mission right in the middle of all of it.
Yep.
So, yeah.
Now, how can listeners learn more about Hope Church and NYC, Hope Midtown, if they're feeling inspired, website, sermons, because we're about to play sermons this month. I listen to them all. I love them. If you could just mention websites and potential involvement for
Sure.
people.
Yes, yes, yes. Yeah, so Hope Church, like Hope Midtown, our local church is part of a network of 9 churches that are the Hope Church NYC
Yeah,
family.
it's very cool,
So
guys.
there's actually, there's 9 Hope churches. So you can look that up on Instagram and Facebook and websites, just Hope Church NYC. I think it's .org for website, and then just Hope Church NYC on Instagram and Facebook. But and then Hope Midtown is our particular church, located on 31st and Park, and so we are Hope Midtown .org. I think.
Yep.
And then also on Instagram we have some good stuff that we put up there. So yeah, follow along there, and we have actually one of my favorite things is that we have actually kept our Sunday services over Zoom this entire time. So it was kind of out of like default at first because we just were like scrambling, like we have no idea how to pre-record things. So, but we actually, our Sunday services are entirely over Zoom, which keep it like really, really, high touch point. We break out into breakout rooms and just say hi to each other for 3 minutes. It's really a
That's awesome.
Very neat personal connection. So all of our sermons are live over Zoom, and so you'll get to hear that as you play those recordings. Those are live over Zoom, not pre-recorded and polished. So
No, they are. She sent them over to us, and sometimes they're like audio files, and I'm like, oh no, these are Zoom files on YouTube. It's pretty cool.
Yeah.
But I think there's something to be said about that, where it almost feels more direct, I guess. Like some places record stuff before, which is great. If that's their strength, that's fine. But there is something to be said about like it feels like you're in front of me right now. You know what I mean? It's kind of hard to explain.
Yep. Yeah. It's been an interesting way to preach, but I actually really love it because it just feels like more conversational, and like I don't have to be, performing and, doing this kind of polished thing.
Yeah.
So,
No, it's true. It can become robotic if you're like trying to make it perfect and like cut. Oh no, we need to do that again. It's just live. It's raw, right?
Yeah.
That actually is a good segue into the last point, which is we're going to talk about abiding, which I believe it's based off of John and Luke. If you could talk about what the inspiration behind this series, because we're actually going to play both part 1 and 2. If you could mention that, and then we're going to play them right now. I'm happy to play them. They're great.
Great. Yeah, it was just a 2-parter that I did over the summer, and definitely, you're right. Based on John 15, what does it mean to abide, and especially in a time where, it just felt more like we were surviving, but how do we abide in a deep way? And so I used, in both messages, different analogies of all things that I was learning about plants and having my little kitchen garden, and just, the concept. I actually had written a poem back over a year and a half ago, so before anything. That's just a new foray that I've had of just reflecting poetically, so kind of a theological poet.
Very cool.
Poetry kind of thing, but I believe it's in one of the sermons that whole concept of like it's the darker the dirt, the richer the soil. Like this, when we're in the deep dark dirt, that's actually the place where the soil is richest for our growth.
I like that.
So the first part is kind of just on like what it means to be buried down deep, so that our roots can grow before we are in a place to produce fruit. So kind of a part 1 on the roots and a part 2 on the fruit, and I really enjoyed giving that, and it just felt timely for me this summer. So I think that came out as this is a very personal lesson that I'm learning.
Very cool. Yeah.
Yeah.
Sarah Bournes, pastor of Mission and Formation over at Hope Midtown Church. We really appreciate you doing this. Thanks for doing this.
So glad. Thank you, Brad.
Yeah, and we're about to hear her sermon on abiding, which, guys, stay tuned for it all. I've listened to them. They're great. You don't want to miss this, and you're listening to WNYK 88.7 FM.